The rooftop was never supposed to become a crime scene. On a cool September night in Baltimore, 26-year-old tech entrepreneur Pava LaPere walked home smiling after spending the evening at an arts festival with friends. She had big dreams, a fast-growing company, and a future that looked limitless. Less than an hour later, she would be dead on the rooftop of her own building, the victim of a brutal attack that shocked the entire country and exposed a terrifying failure in the justice system. The killer was not a stranger to violence. In fact, police were already searching for him in connection with another horrifying crime. Yet somehow he was still free, roaming the streets of Baltimore, moments away from crossing paths with a woman who had dedicated her life to helping others. This is the tragic and deeply unsettling story of Pava LaPere, the brilliant young CEO whose kindness may have cost her everything. On the morning of Monday, September 25, 2023, employees began arriving at the offices of Ecomap Technologies on West Franklin Street in downtown Baltimore. Ecomap was a growing tech startup focused on connecting businesses, entrepreneurs, and community resources through innovative mapping systems. At the center of it all was Pava LaPere, the company's founder and CEO. Friends described her as energetic, passionate, and endlessly driven. She wasn't the type to sleep in or miss meetings. Work was her mission, and the people at Ecomap were more than co-workers to her. They were family. So when Pava failed to appear for work that Monday morning, concern spread quickly throughout the office. Employees tried calling her repeatedly, but she didn't answer. That alone was unusual. Pava lived in the same building as the office, meaning her commute was literally an elevator ride downstairs. As the hours passed and nobody heard from her, panic slowly replaced confusion. Around 10 a.m., Ecomap co-founder Sherrod Davis contacted the Baltimore Police Department to report her missing. Officers were dispatched while employees searched the building themselves. When they entered Pava's apartment, they discovered the door unlocked, but there was no sign of her inside. Her belongings were still there. Her phone was unreachable. Everyone began comparing notes, trying to figure out when they had last seen her alive. One employee mentioned that Pava sometimes visited the rooftop to admire the Baltimore skyline. It seemed harmless enough, but in that moment, the suggestion changed everything. Kevin Carter, one of Pava's closest friends and co-workers, climbed the ladder leading to the restricted rooftop. Seconds later, horror overtook him. He immediately called 911, struggling to speak through shock and panic. Lying on the rooftop was Pava's body. She had visible injuries to her head and neck. Part of her clothing had been removed. Nearby were blood-stained objects, broken teeth, scattered clothing, and signs of a violent struggle. The medical examiner later confirmed that Pava had died from strangulation and blunt force trauma. Investigators also believed she had been dead for nearly 2 days, meaning she had likely been killed on Friday night. The news devastated Baltimore. Pava LaPere wasn't just another entrepreneur. She represented ambition, compassion, and innovation. Originally from Texas and Arizona, she had moved to Maryland to attend Johns Hopkins University, where she initially planned to become a doctor. But over time, she realized she wanted to make change on a larger scale. Instead of treating individual patients, she wanted to improve entire systems that affected people's lives. She launched non-profit initiatives to help student entrepreneurs and eventually founded Ecomap Technologies, pouring every ounce of energy into growing the company. Her intelligence and leadership quickly gained national attention. She was named to Forbes' prestigious Strength Under 30 list and became known as one of Baltimore's brightest rising stars. But despite her success, those closest to her said she remained humble and deeply caring. She advocated for equality, community support, and social justice. Employees described her as authentic, fearless, and endlessly optimistic. Investigators soon began reconstructing Pava's final hours. On Friday evening, September 22nd, she had attended Artscape, a popular arts festival in Baltimore, with co-workers and friends. Witnesses said she appeared happy and relaxed throughout the night. Around 10 p.m., she separated from her friends and walked home alone. Security cameras outside her building captured her approaching the entrance casually, still dressed in the same red pants, red sneakers, and black and white sweater she would later be found wearing on the rooftop. But another figure also appeared on camera. A man was seen following behind her. Moments after Pava entered the building, the man walked up to the door and motioned for her attention through the glass. Pava approached him, and the two spoke briefly. Whatever he said convinced her to trust him. In a heartbreaking act of kindness, Pava opened the door and allowed him inside. Cameras showed the pair eventually heading toward the rooftop together. Roughly 35 minutes later, only the man was seen leaving the building. Investigators immediately realized they had seen him before. The suspect was identified as 32-year-old Jason Billingsley, a violent repeat offender already wanted for another horrifying crime committed just days earlier. On September 19th, Billingsley had allegedly entered an apartment building where he worked as a maintenance contractor. Claiming there was a maintenance emergency, he forced his way into the apartment of a young couple named April Hurley and John T. Gilmore. According to investigators, he bound them with duct tape, sexually assaulted April, slit her throat, poured gasoline throughout the apartment, and set the building on fire before fleeing. Miraculously, both victims survived, though they suffered severe burns and life-threatening injuries. Police were already searching for Billingsley when Pava unknowingly encountered him outside her building. The realization sent shockwaves through the city. Authorities launched an intense manhunt, warning the public that Billingsley was extremely dangerous. Baltimore's police commissioner described him as someone capable of rape, murder, and unimaginable violence. The city was terrified. Residents questioned how a man with such a violent history had been free in the first place. 2 days after Pava's body was discovered, U.S. Marshals tracked Billingsley to a train station in Bowie, Maryland. He was arrested without incident while attempting to reach a relative's home. During police interrogation, detectives confronted him with surveillance footage and evidence placing him with Pava on the night she died. Billingsley admitted that he encountered her on the street after Artscape and asked to speak with her. According to him, Pava invited him into the building and eventually brought him to the rooftop. When detectives asked what happened next, Billingsley claimed he blacked out. He described hearing voices in his head, saying one part of him told him not to hurt her while another, darker force pushed him toward violence. Investigators rejected the explanation immediately. Billingsley clearly remembered following Pava, entering the building, and leaving afterward. He even admitted to striking her with a brick found at the scene. Detectives believed he fully understood his actions. During questioning, one detective pointed out the tragic irony of the crime. Pava had spent years advocating for social justice and compassion. She believed in giving people humanity and trust. That very kindness may have led her to let Billingsley into the building. But the deeper tragedy involved the justice system itself. Billingsley should never have been free. In 2015, he had been convicted of a brutal first-degree sexual offense involving another young woman. He was sentenced to years in prison, and parole boards repeatedly determined he remained dangerous. Yet despite those warnings, Billingsley was released early in 2022 due to good time credits, a system designed to reduce prison sentences for inmates who display good behavior behind bars. Critics argued that the policy failed to account for the severity of violent crimes or the risks certain offenders posed to the public. Following Pava's murder, outrage exploded across Maryland. Many believed the system had failed catastrophically. Survivors April Hurley and John T. Gilmore later filed lawsuits against the property management company that employed Billingsley, claiming they failed to properly investigate his criminal background before giving him access to residential buildings. Pava's family also turned their grief into activism. Her parents publicly campaigned for legislative reform, pushing lawmakers to prevent violent sex offenders from receiving early release through sentence reduction programs. In 2024, the Pava LaPere Act was officially signed into law, restricting certain violent offenders from earning sentence reductions through good conduct credits. Another law honoring Pava established startup grants for young entrepreneurs in Baltimore, ensuring her passion for innovation and community growth would continue long after her death. Johns Hopkins University also renamed its Innovation Center in her honor, preserving her legacy for future generations of entrepreneurs. Eventually, Jason Billingsley accepted plea agreements in both criminal cases. He received multiple life sentences for the assault and attempted murders of April Hurley and John T. Gilmore, as well as another life sentence for the murder of Pava LaPere. Prosecutors stated it was highly unlikely he would ever be released, but for Pava's family, no sentence could undo the damage. No prison term could restore the future that had been stolen from a brilliant young woman who wanted nothing more than to improve the world around her. During emotional court statements, Pava's father spoke not only about his daughter's accomplishments, but also about the pain of knowing her death was preventable. He acknowledged the difficult upbringing Billingsley experienced, including years in foster care and instability, but he also emphasized that society failed to stop a clearly dangerous individual before more lives were destroyed. The story of Pava LaPere remains one of the most heartbreaking true crime cases in recent memory because it represents so many painful realities at once. It is the story of a gifted young entrepreneur whose life was cut short just as she was beginning to make a real impact. It is the story of a repeat offender who slipped through cracks in the system despite multiple warnings. And perhaps most painfully, It is the story of human kindness meeting unimaginable evil. Pava opened a door for someone she believed needed help or compassion, never realizing she was inviting danger into her life. Her death forced a city to confront difficult questions about public safety, criminal justice reform, rehabilitation, and accountability. Yet even after such tragedy, Pava's legacy did not disappear. Her ideas, her advocacy, and her determination to improve the world continue through the laws inspired by her life and the countless people motivated by her story. Friends say she believed systems could always be improved and that people had the power to create meaningful change. In the aftermath of unimaginable violence, that mission somehow continues. And while justice may never erase the grief left behind, Pava LaPere's name has become more than the victim of a tragic crime. It has become a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the lasting impact one person can leave on the world even after they are gone.